how to make more money without working hard.
So we touched on it earlier. We spoke about time tracking
Right.
because that's kind of your benchmark to see how much am I working? How much am I earning? What does that hourly rate look like? And if that doesn't amount doesn't look good to you, it means that you're working stupid, not smart.
That's right.
So there's a number of elements that go into working smart. So firstly, it's about making sure that you're earning enough for each job. So we've touched on that.
Mm.
And how can you do that? So there's kind of three things that I look at. So there's my time, there's my takings, how much money am I making? And then there's tools. What tools can I use to work smarter? How can I automate this process? Or how can I make my life easier so that I save time and I'm making more money? So that's what working smart looks like to me, is doing the most I can in the least amount of time. And the ways I do that is by using tools and automation. I'm hoping to get back into a bit of a morning routine. At the moment, my baby tells me what my morning routine will be,
Okay.
but we're getting there. We're getting a bit more consistency. Um, but yeah, I also exercise for me, moving my body really helps set me up for the day nice and early so that I can get to my desk quite early. Um, Taking a moment to myself, not checking my cell phone, importantly, in the morning, not checking email, going straight to that focused task.
All right. Thank you so much, Mel,
Great.
for joining me this morning. It's still morning, or maybe afternoon since it's 12:30, but it doesn't matter since it will be on YouTube. Anyway, let me start. Welcome, everyone. I am Sibongiseni Mgolozeli. I am the host and founder of this podcast called Read to Inspire podcast. Our mission is basically to promote the reading culture within the African continent and beyond, with a vision to see each and every African home with a bookshelf. Part of our mission is basically to invite authors, especially local authors who have written their ideas in terms of their expertise in their respective field, who have written those books and share their ideas with us. And basically, what we do, we go in details, we review their books with them. That is basically what we're about to do now with our guest today. Her name is Shea Karssing. She wrote a book called Freelance Like a Boss: How to Quit Your 9 to 5. Ma'am, thank you for joining me today. How are you feeling?
Thank you so much for having me. And I've really aligned with your mission.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, you will forgive me if there are some glitches with the network, but I hope it won't be as bad considering that the weather conditions today, so they will be disturbing the connection. Anyways, let me start with the icebreaker question. For people who don't know you, perhaps what context would they need to understand about you or need to know about you in order to understand the person that you are today? Let's talk briefly about your upbringing and your background.
Yeah, so I grew up, I guess, in the 90s, and I lived in the Drakensberg Mountains with my family. My family were both employees. So my mom was a teacher and my dad worked for Ezenvelo KZN Wildlife. So very much brought up with that employee mindset of go to school, study, get a job, try work your way up the ranks. So entrepreneurship was never really something that was discussed in my household.
Mm.
Um, so me becoming an entrepreneur was a first for the family, and I had a lot of learning to do along the way. So that's where my book came about, where I realized a lot of people are probably in the same position where
Mm.
it's never been part of the conversation at home, basic business skills.
Right.
And that's why I wrote the book.
Oh, thank you. And maybe before we get into the book, I have one more question that will give even more context in terms of the kind of book that you wrote. You went to Rhodes University for your tertiary life and you studied journalism. Can I maybe ask who or what inspired you to choose that degree?
So I've always loved writing ever since I can remember. I had, when I think it was when I was about 7 years old, I had a little book that my granny gave me where I would write my poems. I remember
Mhm.
in grade five, we were tasked with writing a story, and I ended up writing a story that was almost 40 pages long.
Mm.
So I've just always loved writing. So journalism felt like a natural fit for my passion and my skills.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm grateful for people like your granny who exposed you to reading at a very early age. That now begs the question, when did you start reading books, non-academic books, or books outside of the academic arena or area?
So with my mom being a teacher,
Mm,
she read to us from when we were babies. And funnily enough, she's not actually a reader herself. She doesn't read for pleasure herself, but with her kids, she knew it was very important.
mm.
So basically, she started reading to us from a young age. And then as soon as I could read, I pretty much never stopped. My poor little sister, she would be so bored at home because I was always reading. She wanted someone to play with, and she didn't really like reading that much. And then she had to deal with me. And what are you doing? I'm reading, leave me alone. So, pretty much as soon as I could read, I just picked up books and never stopped.
It makes a lot of sense because for most people actually who have a background or a foundation of reading, it's easier for them to become successful, especially in their writing career. So with you
For
studying
sure.
journalism, it makes a lot of sense. Now let's
For sure.
dive deep to your book, How to Quit 9 to 5. Maybe we can start there. What maybe advice can you give to someone who is not sure whether to quit or not? They don't know the process. Maybe you can take us through the process of quitting our 9 to 5.
So if freelancing, first, I'll start out by saying freelancing isn't for everyone. If you
Mm,
are someone who enjoys having a lot of stability, you know how much money you're going to be getting every month, you perhaps enjoy working in the office environment, freelancing might not be the right career choice for you. If, on the other hand, you find yourself sitting at your desk and you feel uninspired and you don't enjoy working for someone else, you want to work for yourself, and in my experience, I was feeling, I guess, bored because I would sit at my desk and I'd do my work and then I'd go home and you kind of doing things for someone else's goals and mission and not for your own.
yeah.
So that's part of the reason I started freelancing. And if you've got a skill, so mine is writing, but that's just one of the skills that you can
Mm,
have that's marketable. I would suggest the best way to start is by getting a bit of a side hustle. So that's what I did. So I was still working full time. And then in the evenings or in the late afternoons, I would do some writing work, paid writing work for a friend of mine who was a freelancer. She would give me her extra work and I would do that work for her and make some extra money. And it was great to make some extra money on top of my salary. And then I realized really enjoying this. Maybe I should look for more freelance jobs.
yeah.
People knew that I was a writer and that's what I enjoyed. So I started extending my network, getting more work. And then one day I found a writing job that was actually paying me more than my full time job was. So I thought, well, there's the reason I've been looking for. So now it's time to start and go full time into freelancing. But the reason I say to start with the side hustle is it reduces a lot of the risk. Because if
Yeah.
you just quit your job with nothing to go to, what happens when those debit orders start coming off on the 20? We all know that sound. Your cell phone's going ping, 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 and you just see
Yeah,
the
yeah.
money coming off, um, which can be quite a scary experience if you don't have anything to fall back on. So that's why I always recommend to people, if possible,
Mm.
it's hard work because you're working a full-time job and then you're going home and working some more, but it does give you a good foundation before you completely quit your 9 to 5.
Right. And I can imagine that's where you started, maybe with blogging as a freelancer, and then
Exactly.
eventually your book came into the limelight. Maybe the question now would be, how did your book come about? I might just be guessing to say you started by blogging. Maybe tell us true about the writing process of your book now. How did it begin?
So I would find in my freelance career, I'd been freelancing for about 5 or 6 years. And it was especially actually after COVID that I think a lot of people realized after working from home, they thought, I could do this work from home business and maybe I could start my own business, start my
Mm.
own thing. Why do I need to be in the office? So I had a lot of friends who decided to go on that journey and they knew that I'd been freelancing for a few years. So they would phone me up and ask me questions and I'd help them out. And then I realized, well, hey, if there's so many questions out there, where's a comprehensive resource for South Africans to refer to? And I couldn't find anything.
Mm.
So yes, you have SAFRIA, the South African Association of Freelancers. There's a number of Facebook groups that are helpful, but there was no sort of 101 guide written in a book format that I could find to help freelancers kick off their careers. So I thought, well, instead of just answering all these questions to my friends, let me write this down for more people so that more people have access to a freelance career that's going to be successful and sustainable in the long term. So, along with my full time freelancing, I started writing my book on the side. So, that was almost my side hustle of the side hustle. Um, and I would just find time in the evenings, or if I had a gap in my work schedule, when I had a burst of inspiration, to just sit and write and not judge what I was writing. I'd get ideas from other freelancers. And then I suppose what takes the longest really is putting all those ideas into a bit of a logical format and editing, etc., etc. But I was really actually having a lot of fun. And in writing the book, I was also able to improve my own career because it gave me ideas to think, well, how can I be better? Why am I giving people this advice and not doing it myself?
Mm.
So, and now the resources out there, and I'm really proud of it.
I think having been a writer myself, I think I could say I'm proud of you as well because I can understand the
Thank
process of
you.
writing a book. It, it's fun, like you said, but sometimes it can be
Mm.
challenging. Now back
Sometimes you
to
just don't feel like it, but
yeah,
that consistency is important to just keep going.
yeah, consistency is key. Now, while we're still talking about how to quit your 9 to 5, I can imagine some people they might be having those side hustles. But again, there might be some challenges they are facing. For instance, one could be facing maybe challenges of imposter syndrome as a reason why it's hard for them to quit their 9 to 5. Perhaps since you touched on your book about the subject of imposter syndrome, what do you think is imposter syndrome and how can we maybe manage or overcome it?
So I think any freelancer, particularly in their career, I mean, anyone in their career can come across these kind of feelings, but freelancers in particular, it's when you second guess yourself. So you feel like an imposter when you actually shouldn't be. So you think that you don't have the skills or capabilities to complete a certain job, for example, and you feel like, why me? Why am I the right person for this job? Or you don't feel capable, but it's a lie. You are. It's just feelings of doubt um, and a lack of self confidence that we all experience from time to time.
Yeah,
So, firstly, it's important for people to know that the fact that you're feeling that way means that you actually are a functional human being. We all have those feelings at some point.
right.
And the fact that you're thinking about it means that you're not an imposter. So just remember that firstly, that it means you're actually really thinking about what you do, which is good. So I've got a number of mechanisms for dealing with imposter syndrome. And there's actually on my website, I've got a free guide. If people go to www.sheakarssing.com and go to the freebies section, there's a guide to take you through ways of getting through it. So some of those tactics are looking at what people actually say about you. So I keep a list of testimonials of my clients who've said what a great job I've done on something. It doesn't have to be a formal testimonial. Sometimes it's just an email that says, wow, I really love this work of yours. and then I save it. So that when I'm having those feelings of self-doubt, I can go and look and see, oh, hey, actually, people say that I am capable. And it really helps your self-confidence to know that other people feel the same way about you too.
Yeah.
And then also to think through, to actually sit back and prove to yourself that you do have the skills. But we forget to look behind at how far we've come, and we forget what we've done and the hoops we've jumped through and the challenges we've overcome to get to where we are today.
Beautiful. What I picked is that it's important to acknowledge your achievements. And also, sometimes with affirmations, it helps. That's something I picked in the book as well. Because, like you said, the fact that you are
Definitely.
thinking about it, I always bring in like my faith beliefs in the picture as well. To always say, if God showed you that vision or that dream, it means He can also empower you with the right resources to be able to accomplish it. Right. Now, okay, when we
Yes,
move
that's
on, let's
wonderful.
say someone has garnered enough courage to quit their job if necessary. But now the question maybe they could be, why freelancing instead of starting a business? Why should I start small instead of going maybe for like going big, like with starting a business?
Sure. So freelancing is taking a skill and selling that skill. That's probably the simplest way to put it. And it can be anything. There's a lot of skills in the creative field. I'm a writer, there's graphic designers, but it could be something like being a virtual assistant. It
Mhm.
could be web development, again, in the creative field. It could be photography. Basically, what freelancing means is you are your own boss. So you can, you, it is a business. You can set it up as a business and get a PTY limited, etc. That's an option. Or you can choose to be a sole proprietor, which is like myself, where you just work under your own name. So, there's a bit of a blurry line because freelancing is a business, but perhaps when you say start a business, you might also be thinking of, okay, starting a business means getting employees. It's where you perhaps are a bit more hands off with the actual work and you more of in a management business managing director role. So some of the risks that come with that is you could say, okay, I'm quitting my job and I'm starting a writing business. I need to hire 6 writers and now I need to find clients. And there's a lot of risk involved because what if you hire your 6 writers and you've got no clients and you can't pay them?
Mm.
So, um, although freelancing is a business, freelancers in general will kind of work for themselves, maybe by themselves, or maybe bring on other subcontractors to help. Um, and it's generally offering a service versus a product.
I understand now totally. Maybe one more question before I move on to my next set of questions. I picked something as you're defining freelancing. You're saying it's a skill that you can turn it into a sellable service or product. For my case, let's say since I am into public speaking, the service that I'm providing is coaching my clients about how to become a better public speaker. Or I even have a book as a product about public speaking. But for other people who are wondering then how to go into freelancing, perhaps what advice can you tell them in terms of which skill can they start with to monetize? How do you know this is the right skill to start with when I'm venturing into the freelancing business?
So there's a number of ways. So it could be a skill that you already have, that you use in your job day to day. So, for example, you might work for a marketing agency as a website developer. You've already
Mm,
got that skill, you practice it every day, and then you decide, okay, instead of working for the agency, I'm going to work for myself and still sell my web development skills. So that's one way.
okay.
It could be something completely different to what you do day to day. So you could be that same web developer who works at a marketing agency, but you really love photography and you're over web development. So then you decide to become a freelance photographer because it's a skill that you have and that you're interested in. Or you could learn an entirely new skill. Again, I would recommend doing this perhaps while you have some kind of employment so that you've still got some income. So I would recommend finding something that you're interested in. You don't have to be passionate about it because sometimes when you turn a hobby into your full time job, you don't really, as soon as you're being paid for something, it sometimes isn't as enjoyable as it was when you were doing it as a hobby. So find something that you are interested in, that you are good at. Because if you're good at something, then you're more likely to enjoy it and you're more likely to attract and retain your clients. So something that you're good at, something that you're interested in, and then something that there's a market for. So you don't want to go ahead and invest your time into selling a skill that nobody out there actually wants. So it's also important to have a sense of what the market needs, so that you're not, it's not pushing your head against a brick wall to find clients.
Right, right. Let's say now you have established your expertise, you have identified the scale you can monetize. The big challenge for some people is the pricing model. Let's talk about different pricing models and how, for your case, you go about it as you have advised in the book.
Yes. So the sort of main ones for a freelancer, there's hourly pricing, where you have an hourly rate, and depending on how long the work takes you, you multiply that by your hourly rate. So that's the first one.
Okay.
Hourly rate, there's project-based pricing, where someone says, I need this job done, and you give them a quote for that specific job. So, I mean, an example that we use frequently is perhaps the plumber comes to your house and he'll tell you, okay, this job is going to cost X amount. Then there's retainers, where your client will pay you a set amount every month and you deliver a similar set of work every month. So that's very consistent work. And then there's value-based pricing, which is mainly project-based, and where you decide or you discover how much that project is actually worth to a client and charge them accordingly. So there's a number of pros and cons, and I actually use all four pricing models depending on the client and the situation. I try to avoid hourly pricing because I feel like I'm being penalized if I work quickly. So that's not really fair. And also, it's a bit disincentivizing for both parties, because the client's wanting you to do things quickly and is watching how long you take. Whereas you're feeling like you need to work quickly so that you're not overcharged. It's a bit of a mess to me. So I prefer to avoid hourly charging. I do a lot of project based. So, for example, when I write website copy, I'm able to give the client a set figure to say this is how much it's going to cost. And actually, to do that, I do use an hourly rate, but only in my head. So I know how much I want to make per hour, and I know how long the project's going to take me ish. So then I multiply that my desired hourly rate by how long it's going to take me, and that will be the project fee. And then I always add a bit extra for some buffer, because you never know, your estimate might be off or whatever. And then retainer based, I've got a few clients where I know I deliver 2 blogs a month, and they pay me an X amount, and I know how long they take me, and it's regular work. And those are nice to have, because it's nice to be sure that you're getting a certain amount of income per month. And then value-based is a bit tricky. So it really involves taking a deep dive into what the customer is trying to get out of the project and what the monetary value could look like to them. So if you write them a new page for their website that is going to get them 10 sales, and those 10 sales are worth 10,000 Rand, you could pitch to say, well, I think 2,000 Rand is a fair price based on the fact that this is going to get you 10,000 Rand. So it doesn't always work for all industries. But if you have a sense of how important a job is to a client, then you can use that value and their budget to come up with a number. So pricing is tricky as a freelancer, variable. There's so much to take into consideration: the client budget, how much you want to make, what the industry demands, the scope of the project. So it takes a bit of experience to get right, but I really urge people not to undercharge, which is a mistake that a lot of us make, especially in the beginning of our careers, is undervaluing ourselves. And that's also where that imposter syndrome comes in, where you feel like, who am I to charge this amount? No, I always say, if you have to close your eyes when you're sending your quote, you're doing it right. So always charge a little bit more that you feel comfortable with, because what's the worst thing that can happen? The client can say no, and perhaps you can say, all right, well, we can remove this and I can charge a bit less or whatever. So another freebie that I have on my website is a rates calculator, and that helps you take various things into account to come up with a hourly rate that you can then use to help you price your project. So that's also on the freebie section of my website.
I appreciate your dynamism in your pricing models. You know when to use which pricing model, especially for me, when you mentioned that you must know which client to charge for which pricing model. So I can relate to that. And sometimes we sell ourselves short, especially when you're starting out in your freelancing. I feel like I'm on that side now, undercharging for my services. So thanks for your advice. And also, like you said, it takes a little bit of experience to be able to have that confidence of knowing when to scale or when to double your rates, especially if you're charging hourly rate. And in your book, you mentioned something that you must at least double or increase your prices at least once a year for inflation purposes or something like that. And I truly, truly appreciate that. So thank you for explaining. And let me move on now to the next aspect of business, which is also very important to drive sales. It's called marketing and branding. We have now established your expertise, you know the skills that you monetize on. Let's talk about the importance of branding and marketing because some people are coming from 9 to 5, they have no idea whatsoever about these two important items in business.
Yeah. So, firstly, I want to start off by saying don't let those things hold you back. So, if you feel like you would love to start freelancing, but you don't have a logo and you don't have a website, and oh, I can't possibly start because I don't have all those things. Don't let that hold you back. I didn't have any of those things when I first started out, and I built a fairly successful business just based on my connections and my network, and being able to do good work for clients.
Right.
Firstly, that is your best form of marketing ever, because when you do good work for a client, they'll use you again or they'll refer you to someone else, and you'll be the first person they think of when they've got a job. So that is your ultimate number one best form of marketing, is doing a good job. Second is using your network. So everyone you know, even if they're not going to become a client, you want them to know what you do so that when they meet someone randomly wherever and they find someone who could use your services, they'll say, oh, I've got just the person for you. So it doesn't even have to be business connections. Tell your friends, your family, everyone who you know, your ex-colleagues, what you do, so that you'll be the person that others know to trust when they're looking for your services.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to your own branding and marketing, I found that once I had my website and my logo and things like that done, it almost took my business to the next level. It wasn't something I needed to rush into, but having that does lend some kind of credibility of your brand. And so it's definitely helped my business, and I'm glad that I went ahead and did those steps, because it just looks more professional, I suppose. So when you start looking for maybe bigger clients, bigger contracts, more jobs, they want to see that level of professionalism. Mm-hmm. So that's where having some kind of brand and being able to market yourself comes in.
Beautiful. And now that you've got that underway or out of the way, you are more inclined or you are more aware of what it means to market yourself as an expertise. You have marketed yourself, you have established your brand. Some people might not be aware of the legalities of the business. I wonder, maybe you can emphasize for us the importance of drafting contracts as a freelancer between yourself and your clients when you are doing your business. So maybe if you can take us through that process, and also the importance of filing for taxes, at what rate should you be applying for VATs and all those kind of things, the legalities, the importance of also opening a business bank account. Take us through the importance of all of those things.
So as we spoke about, freelancing does mean that you are opening a business. So it's only one aspect to have a skill. You then need to have business acumen in order to run a successful and sustainable business. So if you just have a skill and you're not willing to learn the other stuff, the truth is that you're actually not going to succeed in your freelance career. You need to learn all of those business elements that I had to learn. And as I said, I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. So this was all new to me.
Yeah.
And it took a bit of trial and error to get it all right. And, I made a lot of mistakes along the way, like not having contracts in place with clients. So contracts are so important so that your interests are aligned from the beginning and the communication is clear and the expectation is set about what the work will entail, when you're going to be paid, how you're going to be paid, how your communication is going to be with the clients. These are all important things to include. Non-disclosure agreements. Are you able to share the content? The client may require that you sign some kind of non-disclosure agreement. So I would recommend having a template. Either you can get a lawyer to draft one up for you or look online for one that's relevant to your career and then tailor it to your needs and tailor it to each client. And it just is a good way to have everything that's important outlined on a piece of paper so that you have some kind of legal backing if anything goes wrong. And you might think, oh no, I know this person. There's no ways things will turn sour. There's no ways they won't pay me. Just wait. Every freelancer has been burnt at some point. So at least having a contract behind means that you have some kind of established document to fall back on. So please, with any job, I urge you to have a contract that you can tailor and send out. Then when it comes to taxes, it depends on your business structure. So if you are like me and you're a sole proprietor freelancer, which means you just work under your own name, you haven't set up a separate business, you're required to pay provisional tax, which means that you pay your taxes every 6 months. And it's actually a good thing because otherwise what happens is you're going to get hit with a massive tax bill at the end of the year with no money to pay for it. So at least if it's every 6 months, you have to pay it more often and it's not as big of a chunk. So what I recommend to people is put money away every month because you've got to remember the money you earn as a freelancer, it's not all yours. So if you have a job you've invoiced 5,000 Rand, you think, woohoo, I've got my no, it's not 5,000 Rand. The tax man hasn't taken their bit yet. So I always recommend saving a percentage so you can work out kind of how much you think you're going to earn in that year, see what tax bracket you fall into, and then save that percentage away in a savings account where you're then earning interest and you'll have some extra money at the end of the day too. And then you've got to keep a record of all your income and expenses, and you can deduct expenses from your income so that you taxed on a bit less. So for example, if you buy a new laptop, you can put that under the business because it's being used for business use. You can charge home office expenses for the percentage of your home that you work in. Things like, I don't know, paper that you need to buy for your business or stationery, anything. You can deduct that as an expense. So you end up paying less tax. So the important things to know about tax are if you're a sole proprietor, expect to pay twice a year and then expect to file your income tax too. So you're filing 3 times a year. Save money for taxes. Make sure that you deduct any business expenses from your income. And the third piece of advice I would say is get a tax practitioner to file for you. It's honestly the best money that you can spend. It's about, for me, my tax practitioner charges me about 800 Rand a month, not a month, every 6 months. I mean, it's really worth it for them to do the e-filing portion for me. And it takes a lot off my plate. So that would be the third thing I'd recommend when it comes to tax. Oh, and you asked about VAT. So remember that if you earn more than 1 million Rand in that tax year, then you're required to register for VAT, which is value added tax, which means that people have to pay tax on your services. So something else to bear in mind that you'll need to register.
While on VAT, you also mentioned in your book, you can also apply for VAT tax if maybe you are making 500,000 a year. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, you can apply for VAT even if you're not earning over 1 million Rand a year. If it's going to be, so it is a lot of admin. So I'm anti it, but if you are someone who is buying a lot of stock, for example, then you're able to claim the VAT back on that stock if you are VAT registered. For me, I'm not really buying things that warrant me deducting the VAT and improving my tax situation. So it's very individual. And again, I recommend chatting to a tax practitioner who can advise on the best course of action for you.
I see. I think most people now would be more excited understanding the different elements of business that we have touched on. In your book, you talk about the importance of managing your time or controlling your time such that you avoid being burned out. How do you go about controlling your time, and what is important, especially not only about your burnout, that's part of mental health. How do you manage to keep yourself healthy and active without having to worry about, all different kinds of mental health issues you can think of?
So it's difficult as a freelancer because your time is essentially your money. So you can end up working too long, too many hours because you want to make more money. And it's a trap that a lot of us freelancers fall into at some point. And at the end of the day, like you say, you'll crash and burn because there's only so long that you can keep doing that. And it's important to remember that that's not why you became a freelancer. For most people, they want more freedom, more flexibility, more time to spend on the things they love. So keeping that perspective really helps. And then bearing in mind that your time is your money, you need to be very careful about how you spend it. So I always like to look at, for a project, for example, how long is it going to take me? How much am I earning per hour? Is this worth my while? Because a lot of freelancers, we end up saying yes to too many things. And that means our calendars fill up. And that means that we're working too hard. And when you work too hard, you actually can't produce good work for your clients because you're overworked and your mental health suffers. So bearing that perspective in mind and saying no when you need to. It's hard as a freelancer to say no to what you feel is extra money or extra work. But when you say no, you actually open yourself up to more opportunities, not less. You've got to say no to the things that either aren't going to fill your cup, they're not going to make you enough money, they're going to be a drain on your resources and your time. Learning to say no is honestly one of the most important milestones as a freelancer. And then in terms of time tracking is very important. There's a lot of free applications you can use so you can see how long each project is taking you and work out, oh, was this actually profitable for me or not? Or where am I spending too much time? Where am I spending too little time? So tracking your time, very important. And then I also use calendar blocking. So on my Google Calendar, which I use, I'll block in how long I think each job is going to take me. So then I can see if I'm about to take on extra work, I'll say, oh no, my calendar is actually full for this week. I can't take on any extra work. And to be quite strict about not overfilling your calendar, making sure you have gaps in your calendar for when emergencies arise or whatever it may be. So it's also something that comes with experience, but don't make the same mistakes I did and overcommit because it doesn't help you and it doesn't help your business.
Absolutely. Give yourself some time to breathe. Now, my next question is based on the section of the book that was one of my favorites. Because as a freelancer, what you want to do is to make as much money as you can without working harder. So the question is how to make more money without working hard.
So we touched on it earlier where we spoke about time tracking because that's kind of your benchmark to see how much am I working? How much am I earning? What does that hourly rate look like? And if that amount doesn't look good to you, it means that you're working stupid, not smart. So there's a number of elements that go into working smart. So firstly, it's about making sure that you're earning enough for each job. So we've touched on that. And how can you do that? So there's kind of three things that I look at. So there's my time, there's my takings, how much money am I making? And then there's tools. What tools can I use to work smarter? How can I automate this process? Or how can I make my life easier so that I save time and I'm making more money? So that's what working smart looks like to me, is doing the most I can in the least amount of time. And the ways I do that is by using tools and automation, and then also doing things like spending solid focused time. So something that's been really powerful for me is to switch off from all distractions. And it's amazing how much you can actually get done when you completely focus on a task, on one task, not on doing 20 things at once, but doing one thing. So if I've got a big project that I'm working on, I will close all my browser tabs. I will set time aside. I will lock my office door. I will put my headphones in and I will sit and focus. And sometimes I'm amazed that I can sit for 2 hours and I've done 6 hours worth of work
Wow.
in a normal circumstance. So that focus time has really been very powerful for me too. And then things like calendar blocking, like I spoke about, making sure that you're allocating the right amount of time to a task, and that should be focused time.
Mm.
So choose the best time of day for you. So for me, it's the morning. Don't ask me to do focus time in the afternoon because I'm all over the show. I'm over it by then. I need to sit at my desk early in the morning and get stuff done. So if you know that you are most productive from X hours to X hours, use that time for your focus time to get as much done as you can. So, and then look and see there's so many tools out there. If you're struggling with something that's taking you administratively long, maybe there's an app that can do it for you. Or if you're trying to do your own bookkeeping, for example, and you're spending hours and hours and hours doing your own bookkeeping, maybe it's actually beneficial to pay someone to do it for you. So always thinking about how can I be the most efficient?
Mm.
And that's where you really start to see success in your freelance career.
Right. And you touch on so many beautiful aspects of the business because some business owners, I noticed those ones who are very successful, they know how to delegate. For instance, now you spoke about the importance of
Mm,
delegating, let's say for accounting purposes, and earlier on you mentioned of the importance of getting a tax practitioner, which you mentioned is not as expensive as people might think, like $800 every 6 months, that's nothing, honestly. And speaking on that as well, it's also important to know your strengths. Like you just touched on the
mm.
importance of knowing when exactly, as an individual, you are mostly productive and more focused. The laser sharp focus is very impressive. For me, I can relate to you because I'm more productive in the morning. I do my most valued task in the morning, and then I become more happy now during the rest of the day. And speaking on that note, for me, I have a morning routine that I follow that make me even to develop more energy to tackle other tasks during the day. One of my favorite books is by Robin Sharma, excuse me. It's called The 5 a.m. Club. And he says in that book, if you win your morning, you win your day. If you win your day, you win your life. So do you have a morning routine that makes you even more productive during the day as a freelancer?
So I used to, and then I had a baby, and everything changed very
Yay!
quickly.
Congratulations.
So I'm hoping to get back into a bit of a morning routine. At the moment, my baby tells me what my morning routine will be,
Okay.
but we're getting there. We're getting a bit more consistency. Um, but yeah, I also exercise for me, moving my body really helps set me up for the day nice and early so that I can get to my desk quite early. Um, Taking a moment to myself, not checking my cell phone, importantly, in the morning, not checking email, going straight to that focused task before I do
Mm,
anything else. And it's amazing then how I can smash that out. And then the distractions can come in. But ideally, that's how I prefer to start my day.
I can relate to all of those because that's also some of my non-negotiable, especially not touching your phone, especially in the first hour upon waking up.
Mm.
And also the distractions, some of the distractions that are common to most people, social media. We don't know how to control ourselves to an extent that we we lose ourselves and we lose a lot of time that we can use productively to do the most important task for our on a daily basis. And one more thing I want to mention you, which I'm grateful for, the importance of moving your body, which means to exercise. In your book, you also talk about healthy eating. You must identify the right diet for yourself that keeps you active during the day. So that's part of me. And if I can share with you briefly my morning routine, which I summarized in the 5 letter acronym called PRIME. So I basically prime myself every day for happiness because I believe that happiness comes first before you can be successful. Some people, they think if I can be successful, I can be happy. No, you need to be happy first, then success will come as a byproduct. So to take you through briefly about my PRIME acronym, the P stands for pray. Obviously, we have different faith or religious beliefs. So for me, prayer is very important. The R stands for read. I'm a big fan of reading. That's why there's this podcast in existence. I have my own book. It started by building that habit of reading every day, especially in the morning. The I is for introspection. So I love to introspect using paper and pen. So that means I'm journaling as part of my introspection, even to the extent of writing at least 3 goals for the day. Then the M stands for meditation. It's for my mind and my body, teaching myself how to become in times of turbulent or unexpected or unforeseen circumstances. Then lastly, there's E, which you briefly touched on, which is for exercise, moving your body. So that's me. When I do that, obviously I'm not perfect. Sometimes I skip 3, sometimes all of them. But on average, 5 times a week out of 7 days, I try to do all of those, at least 3 a day. Right. Now let me move to
That's
my
amazing.
last 2 questions, which are not related to your book now or anything, but they're still about the importance of reading. Perhaps in your career, what would you say are the top 3 or 2 books that have made a significant impact in your life and maybe in the freelancing space that you are in now?
So actually, yeah, Robin Sharma also, not the 5 a.m. Club, but his new book, The Wealth Money Can't Buy. So that
Mm,
was really powerful for me in terms of in a freelancing career, focusing on what's really important because it's easy to get, as I said, easy
mm,
to get caught up in your work and on this treadmill of just working, 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 and not actually taking time to enjoy your life. Um, because when you've got a full-time job and you knock off at 4 or 5, that's the end of your
mm,
day. When you're
mm.
freelancing, you're more flexible. Maybe you work at that time, maybe, and you can end up, as we've spoken about, working too hard and not
Yeah.
taking that time to enjoy your life. So I really loved it's written as little sort of vignettes, stories from Robin Sharma's own life about where he's had mindful moments and about what's really important. And that was really good perspective for me. And I think for everyone to find the joy and find those moments in your daily existence. And it doesn't have to be taking a massive trip somewhere or, doing anything wild. It's those everyday moments that keep you grounded and motivate and inspire you. So I really enjoyed that book. And then another theme that we've touched on is I really enjoyed Cal Newport's Deep Work. That really inspired me to try that non-distracted focal time. Again, I'm not perfect, and the book is quite hectic. What he recommends, in the book, a lot of the people that he references go like completely off grid
Mm.
to finish a project, and you don't see them for months. That's not feasible or desirable for everyone. But taking elements from that to bring into my own career has been really powerful.
Hmm. Our Cal Newport's one is one of my favorites as well because it's actually challenged the traditional wisdom of having to follow your passion. It's all about work to him. If you schedule, you know what you want, you know your goals, then focus on doing the work, then passion or love thereof of what you are doing will come as a byproduct when you start seeing the fruits, like money coming in from different clients. So I love that as well. That's why it's one of my favorite books. The last question now, ma'am, before I let you go, is a question of legacy. When all is said and done in what you are doing now, what would you like to be remembered for?
So I'd like to be remembered for someone who loves life and lives life to the full. And that's part of why I'm a freelancer, is that I want the flexibility to be able to do things on my own terms and take advantage of any opportunity that comes my way. So definitely someone who wasn't afraid to
Yeah.
take steps, take big moves, do big and live a big life. Even though, other people looking in might think, oh, it doesn't, it's not really, you're not doing anything wild or crazy, but just someone who enjoys their life and lives life to the full and every day finds the joy in every day. So that's definitely something. And then the second element is someone who gives freely, of their time, of their resources, of their knowledge. So I think those are the two most important things that I would like to be remembered for.
Maybe before I let you go, there's one question I forgot to ask about your
Mm.
book now. We spoke about all these things, but we didn't talk about where to find it, how much is it. I'll incorporate this part
Oh,
in
yeah,
it. So if you can tell us
sure.
how much is the book and where can you find it in South Africa?
So, Freelance Like a Boss is my book, and it's available pretty much anywhere you buy books. So, exclusive books, bargain books. It's on Amazon. There's a Kindle version on Amazon. You can find it on Takealot. Takealot often has specials. So, I think the standard retail price for the book is about 260 Rand. I've seen it on Takealot for about 160. So, that's often where I direct people to get a good deal. If you want a signed copy, you can order one directly from me for 190 Rand plus shipping via Pudo, so about 250 Rand, and you can order that from me on the website.
I wish I would have opted for the signed copied one. I got mine, like you were saying, is available in bookstores nationwide. I got mine at Menlyn at Exclusive Books. So I'm so grateful for it. I've learned so much, and it's something that I'll incorporate into my business world. Thank you so much, ma'am. Until we meet again,
Thank you.
bye bye.